The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience, because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you very much for joining us on this Monday evening, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I hope everyone's having a great day. One of the things that I love about October is that there are so many great activities going on. There's so much wonderful stuff happening. It's really hard to keep up. And in a little bit, of course, we'll be talking about our big October 31st thing going on. But I did run across through Facebook over at the Women's Club this incredible event. And this, honestly, this thing hits all the right buttons for me. And I can't imagine that all of you who are interested in the stuff that I'm interested in wouldn't agree in some way. And I talked about this a little bit on Casual Friday. And we're talking about the Curse of the Vampire Orchestra. It's going to perform a live accompaniment to the classic film Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, which was released in 1922. The orchestra's conductor, Shorey, composed the music played by the group. Through this fresh score, the film is reinterpreted with Shorey's use of classic orchestral instrumentation, industrial percussion, electronica, and a full choir. My God, this is truly speaking to me. I think this is one of those things that, you know, this is normally one of those type of events I hear about after the fact. So the fact that I'm hearing about it now and I'm going is really exciting. And more exciting is we were able to bring on today the creative director, composer, conductor of all this, and just the creative mind behind it, Shorey. And Philip, welcome to GhostBox Radio. It's so nice to have you with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. It's really great to be here.
You know, I think, you know, I just am so excited, first of all, for a couple things. I'm excited to hear your interpretation for Nosferatu. I'm also excited that it seems like that this is not just like a one-off enjoyment of silent film, that this is an area that you are very interested in. And the fact that, as we were talking prior to starting this today, that, you know, you're able to share this film with so many people that may have only heard of it, may not even know about it. I mean, that has to be, I guess maybe I'll just leave it to you, Philip, to answer the question. What was the reason behind picking this?
Oh, man. So that's a loaded question. Great. Great question. Where do I start here? Okay, I'll start with my love for silent film.
Yeah.
I got into film composition when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. I was in the rock and roll scene. I'm kind of a punk rocker in high school, hanging out with the metal kids and just having fun. And then I stumbled upon a Philip Glass Kronos Quartet soundtrack, and it was for Dracula. And I was, you know, in a little bit of my own little vampire phase at that time. Mm-hmm. And it just really intrigued me. So I picked it up and I thought, oh my goodness, this is crazy. I'm a piano player. I've grown up playing the piano, classically trained. And I just realized the incredible power of music and movies and I just fell in love with it. Instantly, I thought I need to start at the beginning with this. So I went to classic horror first, and Dracula and King Kong and Max Steiner and just the greats. And, you know, that quickly led me into Bernard Herrmann and Alfred Hitchcock films. And then I was in the sci-fi realm, and then I was in the 80s, and, you know, just kind of went through the century of great composers and great film music, and just developed a lifelong rabbit hole for myself that I just fell into and always dreamed. I'm like, man, I want to be a film composer, and just dreamed of that. And so I was in that little vampire phase in high school, and of course I'm like, well, what other vampire movies are there? Like, this is, big part of the whole scene, so obviously I'm going to Vampire. I think actually that predates Nosferatu. Most people don't know that, but Nosferatu is the original vampire film, in quotations, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But then, then you're into Nosferatu, and then you're into these other ones, and you see some of the same stories repeating, and then, some other things. And it was cool. I mean, the cinematography, the German expressionism, the artistry of it, that just kind of went down like the rabbit trail of like Dr. Caligari, Metropolis, and, Hunchback of Notre Dame and Phantom of the Opera, just like the whole thing. And then, so I moved to Minneapolis, and I grew up in New Hampshire.
Okay. And
I moved in that New England.
Oh yeah.
Talk about a place for horror.
Totally. Totally.
I mean,
yes.
You're inspired just by like driving down the streets. Stone walls along every road. Everything's winding.
Yep.
The forest is dense constantly. You've got just old ancient graveyards for our country's context. Just wonderful, beautiful area in the fall, of course. I mean, the foliage, we like to brag about it here in Minnesota, but as a native New Englander, I have my qualms with that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I moved to Minnesota, and that was just kind of miraculous, and just here I am, and this is where I want to be, and I'm sure this is a good place. And I get thrusted into the theater scene here in Minneapolis, and I was hanging out a lot with some bike clubs here in town. And so lo and behold, I'm playing music on the beach while some of these guys are doing different things, on the beach that you typically do on a Monday. And they hear me playing accordion, and some of them are like, well, you should play accordion in the theater. So they invite me into the Bedlam theater scene, which was not really a thing anymore, but in the early 2000s, and it was a quite happening theater. And it's very cutting edge, and that whole the West Bank scene, and a number of my friends are, I'm still hanging out with them, and silent movies with accordion, and whether you're at the Seward Cafe or Hard Times or some art show in some gallery somewhere, like, it's a thing. And being a guy that was an accordion player, piano player, composer, into classic horror, being plopped here in Minneapolis, where a live accompaniment, usually with a small band or an individual, is quite a fun thing to do and be a part of or go see. That's what I was doing, and that's where I was, and so I'm just kind of like into this somewhat by default, somewhat by maybe just like finding my people, and got really into it, and performed a bunch. Had my friends over for Halloween. We watched Nosferatu on the side of the building, outside of my house, to a campfire, and I'm just like accompanying the music for it, right? So I just have this natural bent towards creepy circus music and composing darker orchestral music-esque kind of stuff. That's my style. And yeah.
I feel like that silent movies really lends to that. And I want to say really quick, we had on a guest last week, Angela Artuso, and she lives out in the East Coast. She lives over in the New Hampshire, Connecticut area. And so she, talking about that, and I've only been out there once myself, but I can attest to I was out there in the fall and there was nothing like it. I love falls in Minnesota, don't get me wrong, but out there that just was like those winding roads, everything. There is something wonderful about that. When you were talking about just like the silent films and stuff, and I was thinking to myself how really you could do so much with any silent film, and you can do almost any genre with music. And I think to myself, I have a version of Metropolis that is backed by the BBC Orchestra. I also have a version of Metropolis that's Giorgio Moroder, that has is putting all the rock music and Queen and stuff to it as well. And in between you have stuff that is I have lots of versions of Metropolis that have a lot of very I guess you call traditional sort of soundtracks. I mean, it really does feel like that these films are a very creative area for someone like yourself to be able to try and explore different arenas. And even, I think within the same film, you could probably break up the styles as well.
Yeah. Well, no, that's absolutely. And some of these movies, like the horror movies for sure, have gotten a lot of notoriety, but there's so many others like the Chaplin era and others that are not silent and that are not horror, that are just super famous, and they're beautiful pieces. And what if you read the book Film Sound, I love that opening where it talks about how sound actually killed the art form of filmmaking. I mean, you could argue it became a new art form, but man, like when it was just so pure as theater on screen and music, it was a different approach. Yeah. And the music, it was fine, it was good. A lot of it's been lost, but to get to your point about modernizing it, that was something, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that was something that I really wanted to do when I decided, when I got commissioned at first to write the music for Nosferatu, was to not just make this about Mickey Mousing and slapstick humor, and to also not just make this always dark, like a lot of the bands and the people who write music for Nosferatu, because of the grain, because of the imagery, it can look dark the whole way through. Yeah. But in my opinion, as a composer and just in my philosophy, like too much dark is boring. And actually when you bring in the light, and you bring in the joy or the humor, you balance it out, and the dark is actually darker at that point. There's more contrast in the music. It's more light, more dark. It's not just like dark the whole time. And you can kind of get stuck in that rut if that's like your style. We're a metal band, we're going to do Nosferatu. Yeah. It's just like, well, that's what you do. You do dark music, and they can fit. But I wanted to do something that was like more thematic. I'm a child of the 80s, and so I'm doing something that's more thematic, more John Williams, Danny Elfman, Jerry Goldsmith, like more built on these operatic themes that develop over time, of course with some stingers, some leitmotifs, and I just wanted to create more of a modern soundtrack for this movie that would capture people's attention that are not into silent movies. And that's also something that's on my heart. Like if you go to a lot of these places in Minneapolis that are doing silent movies, they're wonderful, but it is kind of the same crowd. You know what I mean? Like it's the film goers, the film nerds, the people who are into that, and it's great. But I felt like as a fan, I wanted to reintroduce them to a modern audience to help these movies live on further and beyond just the people who are into normal silent movies, which is a pretty niche narrow group.
It truly is. And I think too, there is nothing better than listening to an orchestra live, listening to live performances. I mean, I don't think I need to try to sway you with that, Philip, but there's that electricity of being able to hear that and the accompaniment of the film. I mean, it's just, I'm so excited for that. We're in about a minute or so, we're gonna head off to break, and I did want to make one last silent movie point, because in the next segment I really want to dig deep into your version of Nosferatu here. But I wanted to say, as far as adding sound to films and whatnot. I mean, I think a great example of looking at that and kind of bolstering your point from that book is Phantom of the Opera itself. You know, you have the 1925 version that was silent, 1929 that they tried to add sound to, and you know, it's just it just doesn't quite work the same. And I know that, like you said, there's other silent films that are not all dark and dreary like Nosferatu. Not Nosferatu isn't, but Phantom is kind of. But there is something beautiful about it, and were you really able to enjoy visually everything? I'm not saying that Hollywood's gone wrong with adding sound since 1926, but I mean, there is something, I think, why a lot of us who watch those silent films, why we watch them is because there is just a different world and a different viewing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally different. And then when you do it live, the way it was meant to be seen, you know, with the screen and a live orchestra, you know, or even a live organist or something, like, it's just this, you can't capture that in your living room on Netflix.
No.
You know, like, this is, and I think this might actually be what saves movies in a way. I mean, I don't, it's still way too niche to really claim that. But man, I mean, when cinema is tanking and TV is just so, it's like candy, you know, and it's on a conveyor belt. And it's just like, pump it out. I mean, like, the live experience that AMC is trying to get, it's just not the same. You know, it's like, I can pretty much get that in my living room.
Absolutely.
You know, but if we get back to the silent film era, when you had to go outside and you had to mingle and you had to have the camaraderie of an audience and the live music, and it was capturing a moment like a rock show. Man, there's an energy there, and it's exciting, and it's fun, and it's entertaining, and I think it's kind of achieving what probably the Hollywood AMC is trying to achieve right now and not doing so well of a job at. So it makes the experience even more needed, and just on a creative level, on a social level, bringing people together, different walks of life, not just film nerds, you know, and modernizing these movies. It's a lot of fun on many levels, but cool.
It really is. Why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead, take our first break? When we come back, we're going to talk about how Nosferatu became part of a performance at the Women's Club. I want to get really into the details of how we got to where we are now. There's so much to talk about. This is really exciting. We're talking about Curse of the Vampire Orchestra, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
Welcome to the night where the paranormal unite. A party like never before under the moon's airy light. The vibe is dark, the air is cold, spirits taking flight. Get haunted and ghost and magazine leading the fright. Ghosts and ghouls dancing hand in hand. Lost souls roaming the haunted land. On the battleship New Jersey we gather with glee. Horror and paranormal, a sight to see.
Greg Bakun here. I love historic tours of Minneapolis and seeing everything it has to offer. But, if you know me, I like to include a little spooky in my tours, which is why I found the perfect combination. Minneapolis Trolley Tours does this amazing candlelight ghost tour that you have to check out. It's an extremely immersive experience. It's a trolley trip that starts out at a haunted mansion, traveling around Minneapolis locations exposing ghost stories that the public and business owners would rather left untold. Then a tour of the aforementioned haunted mansion where ghosts of past residents from the 1800s reside, plus a lot of surprises to discover. Next, experience Gertrude's After Hours. Did I mention Gertrude is the mansion's most famous ghost? Maybe she'll show up. And you finish up the tour at Gertrude's Lounge in the haunted basement of the mansion with refreshments and Q&A. The trolleys are climate controlled and the mansion is restored to perfection. Check out MinneapolisTrolleyTours.com for more information. Greg Bakun here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com. Gritty Gear Company is a great place to go for clothing that is fun and expressive, but did you know we also do custom orders on demand? We've worked with all types of companies and organizations, from first responders to even a certain radio station. Our team is here to help you look amazing. Our clothing is of the highest quality, and you will love your logo on the finished product. We are a locally owned small business who simply wants you to look great. Find out more at grittygearcompany.com. Have you ever met someone who not only can help you on a deep spiritual level, but also potentially change your life? Refined Divine is an extremely gifted psychic medium who travels the nation and lives right here in the Midwest. And she offers mediumship, mentorship, house and business parties, energy healing, palm readings, and so much more. Refined Divine has helped thousands, and she can help you.
Hi, this is Psychic Medium Deb. I cannot wait to hear from you. You can go to refineddivinepsychic.com.
Greg Bakun here. Like many of you, I still collect physical books, and not just any books, but books about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. I go to Megas Books and Herbs, located in the Arts District of Minneapolis, but books are only part of it. Megas Books and Herbs offers crystals, jewelry, herbs, oils, and consultations on how to use this stuff. Check out their in-store classes and events too. This place has everything to expand your horizons. Located at 1848 Central Avenue, Minneapolis, or visit megasbooks.com. And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bakun. Thank you for joining us tonight. I have with me composer, conductor, creative director, Philip Shorey. We are talking about Curse of the Vampire Orchestra, their presentation of Nosferatu, a symphony of horror at the Women's Club. It's going to be actually Friday, October 25th. The thing is, folks, is that I think that the show is doing really well, and I think tickets are very, if not sold out, they're pretty close. But here's the deal. This Friday, on Casual Friday for GhostBox Radio, we're giving away 2 tickets to this event. I was able to squeeze one out from them for myself. So I'm definitely going. I was either Philip, either you all gave me a ticket or I miraculously became one of the winners. It was going to be one way or the other how that was going to work. I know that's illegal, but I wasn't going to miss this.
Nice.
So yeah, we're just
awesome.
We're just talking about this fantastic performance, and I'm really excited about it. And so we talked a lot about silent films the last segment, as well as just a little bit about your background. But when it comes to, here you are doing this Nosferatu presentation, and you're doing it at the Women's Club. How did you get to this point where approaching the Women's Club? Have you worked with them before? Just curious.
Well, this is actually, for Nosferatu, this is probably near the end of the journey. I mean, I'll catch you up here.
Sure.
On how this even came about. But in town, we've done also the Granada Theater and the Skyway Theater, the Music Box Theater, the Amsterdam Bar. We did a little clip of it. And then, of course, like other places, we've performed this in Poland a number of times, in Germany, and other orchestras have picked it up.
Wow.
And then there's other possibilities for it out of town still, and we will probably explore those over time. And so the show probably won't be completely done for us and for me, but in town, it just felt like, okay, we've been doing it for 5-6 seasons now, and there's other shows that we do, like Phantom of the Opera. We just premiered that this last February for Valentine's Day.
Nice.
And next year is the 100-year anniversary of the original
That's
cut.
right. Yeah.
And even though we're using the 1929 cut, we also have some sections of the 25 in there, like the ending. I think the ending in 25 is way better than the ending in 29.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of made our own little hodgepodge. And so it's the 100-year anniversary of Phantom of the Opera is next year. That's going to be our Halloween show. So it's really time to hang up Nosferatu. It's had a nice run. And and so, well, we started our first show was 2018. And so let me, I guess I'll tell you the story on why and how and where, whatever.
Please do.
So, I'm in school to be a film composer, and at IPR, I'm that's my dream, like I said earlier, and I'm working in theater at the time as well. And so I'm taking a film class, and this time I see Nosferatu again in film school, in film class. And this time it really hits me. Like, yes, I saw it in my room. And again, I'm in a viewing experience with other people. And it's more interesting when you watch it with other people. And it really hits me. And I actually, like, on a spiritual level. And I'm crying. I just see this love of Ellen and what she does for the people and how she gives her life selflessly. I won't spoil it at the end, but it just really impacts me. Okay. And I just feel like, man, I need to do something with this story someday. And okay, so I didn't end up becoming a film composer. I went and I developed a puppet show inspired by some of the puppetry that I saw at the Bedlam. And I brought my puppet show to Brazil. And this story that I picked, it was a story. I was going on a missions trip to serve the poor in Sao Paulo and weld rickshaws back together and like help people who are sniffing glue in the streets. And it was just a real like honor to bring a puppet show down for them. And it was battery powered. And I grew up doing puppetry. I kind of a gypsy boy, like with my family. And so it was like a talent or a curse or an industry that I really know. And I just used it in Brazil. And when I was down there cleaning the blood off the walls in a safe house for transvestites and a pimp house and working with the local ladies, the church ladies there, it like really impacted me. Sure. And as it should and would anybody. And I get back and I'm like thinking, what am I doing? Like, I want to make a difference in this world. I don't want to just make art for art's sake. And I don't want to just climb the ladder and try to make it in Hollywood. I mean, I'm not even that good of a composer. Who am I trying to kid? And I just hang it up. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to make a bigger difference in the world with this puppet show on the streets. And then I am to try to like make it in Hollywood. And I just really didn't feel like the world needed many more blockbusters anyway. Like, it just, what it needs is personal connection and to feel loved and to know that your life has meaning and purpose and you're not alone in the universe. Like these powerful truths, these spiritual truths that I felt in Brazil. And so I thought, man, I'm going to tell these stories, and about a murderer or modernize a Jesus story and make it relevant today. Bring in these truths and go in places like refugee camps and homeless shelters and places where people don't get to experience the arts. And so I got my show translated into 10 languages and many countries in Europe, South America, traveled did 15 years really of traveling the world and seeing crazy stuff, and lives transformed and institutions transformed on a leadership level, when they actually got a heart for the youth they were serving in their juvenile jail. This was in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw, and it wasn't me. Obviously, I don't claim I'm some like miracle worker. I was trying to do what I believe is God's rescue plan
Mm-hmm.
to save a broken world.
Sure.
And it's life changing to be a part of that. And so, it was in those relationships that there was a festival in Poland that knew me, and I worked with collaboratively for many years. They were like, I pitched them this idea. So Nosferatu. I saw this film at the Parkway again, and I'm like, look at this band, 8-piece. I used to do this, and I'm like, I used to do this. Look at this 8-piece band. They're doing it. And when I watched Nosferatu with this band, it was that. It was like comically creepy, no strong darkness, and it was like a lot of dark, not a big focus on like light or like love. And it was fine. It was good. It was great music. Parkway was packed. People love it, right? But it's that same crowd, like very film niche crowd. And I felt something inside of me say, well, if they can do it, why can't you?
Yeah.
Why can't I? And I'm like, this film isn't speaking to me the way it spoke to me in school. Like the music had turned it totally differently. And I realized that the composer had a worldview. He had, whether he realized it or not, your music reflects your worldview, and how you interpret stories reflects how your worldview. And so if you have a belief of like real evil in the world and real good in the world, you're going to have a lot more contrast in storytelling than like just more like moral relativity kind of thing. And so I just felt like, I think I could tell the story a little differently. And then I really remembered, oh yeah, I'm not even in the scene. I barely know any musicians, and I've stepped out of it. I'm a puppet guy, and like, of course I told my wife at the time, I'm going to write music for Nosferatu someday. You wait. And she loved me, and she was like, oh, please, I hope you do. And like, I was like, I don't know anybody that could write, like they could play my music, and I'm not going to just write an hour and a half worth of music for nothing.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about it, and I know an illustrator in Brazil who's a Gothic illustrator, and I asked him, hey, would you help me produce a comic book that will show this story the way that I envision it, the way that I see Nosferatu, the way that it's spoken to me? And so he did. And I got this comic book, and it's really cool. And I went to Poland to reconnect with this festival that I'd worked with my puppet shows. And I pitched it to them. I'm like, hey, hand out this comic book in Polish while you show Nosferatu at your festival. It's it's an art festival. It's called Slot Art Festival. And they're like, well, it's a silent movie. Shouldn't there be music? This is what the board is telling me. That I'm friends with all the board members. And I'm like, yeah, there should be music. And they said, well, can you write music for this? And I think, whoa, well, I've never written an orchestral score. I've never heard my orchestral score being written. Played. That's my dream. Maybe. They're like, if you can write music for this movie, we have an orchestra that will play it for you. We'll commission you to do it, and we'll feature you on a closing headlining stage.
Wow.
And that was like, boom, like big trust, go big or go home. And I said, hey, if I can share because still, like, I don't want to just play the rat race and just make music. If I can share, because this movie really impacted me. Like, if I can share what I felt and what it means to me through the themes, after the show, I'll do it. And they said, well, of course, like, we love to hear what a composer is inspired by. If you want to share, that's totally normal and fine. So please, yes, of course. So I was like, all right, we're in. Well, let's do it. So in 2018 was my world premiere at this festival with about a 50, 60 piece orchestra. It was my first time working with an orchestra. I brought some players that knew me from the States that could help critique my conducting. It was my first time conducting an orchestra. I was scared out of my mind, super intimidated. And we did it. We performed for, I don't know, at least like 1,000, 2,000 people at this festival. And I got home, and the director of the music box was like, he heard we were friends, and he's like, if you can do that there, why can't you do it here? The Music Box Theater was made to be a silent film theater.
Oh, wow.
And it's had a lot of change of hands, and it's done a lot of different kinds of shows, but its original design was for silent film. And I'm like, whoa, yes, like, okay, but I don't have an orchestra. I live in Minneapolis, and nobody knows me except for like some people from my theater past. And who's going to play in my orchestra? I have no money. I got no budget. Who's going to be in my orchestra? I'm a nobody. And the guy's like, hey, if you got an orchestra, you've got a venue. And I'm like, that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So 1,000 phone calls later, and 900 some no's, literally. Like I kid you not. Like, I learned how to hear no and not take it personally. And I learned how to keep persisting on people until they said no.
Yeah.
And then, like, just don't let them say no for it. Like, don't think they've said no if they haven't yet. And that's hard. And I don't know, man, it's crazy. I got a little 35 piece orchestra in 2018, and we premiered it, and we brought in, like, I don't know, it was like 700-800 people on that weekend, and I couldn't believe it. And so it's just kind of grown ever since. And I've got my biggest orchestra this year. We're sold out tickets faster than ever. We've got more sponsors. It's just like, people love it. It's become a Halloween tradition for so many people. They come every year, and and it's just an honor for me, because I know who I am. I'm a street performer. Like, I'm a busker. That's what I did with my puppet show. And now I get to have an orchestra to play this music and hopefully use it to really impact people's lives on a spiritual level, and bring some kind of like peace, and I just really see this film relevant today in terms of like just all the darkness, all the evil in our world that's like sucking life out of us.
Yeah.
And how Ellen, she's just like, man, love, it wins, Yeah. Love wins. And so I'm just really, I really have fun with it. And the whole orchestra has a lot of fun with it. And we're a diverse group. We come from different countries, different backgrounds. We come together and we have a party, and we just have so much fun together.
I'm so looking forward to it. Why don't we go ahead and do this? Let's take our next break. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about this amazing presentation of Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror at the Women's Club on October 25th with the Curse of the Vampire Orchestra with Philip Shorey. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. Twin Cities Con returns to the Minneapolis Convention Center for the fourth year, November 8th through 10th. Twin Cities Con is a celebration of comics, toys, TV, film, art, cosplay, games, and all things nerdy. There is nothing like Twin Cities Con. It's also a family-friendly event where you can meet your favorite celebrities, browse the vendor hall and artist alley for the coolest merch, watch celebrity Q&As, and even more. Twin Cities Con is bigger and better than ever before. Come see from Star Wars the Emperor himself, Ian McDiarmid, along with Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen, John DiMaggio, who is Bender from Futurama, WWE Hall of Fame wrestler Sting, and Sunday only Grant Gustin from The Flash and Glee, plus more guests to be announced. 3 days of action-packed fun is in the heart of Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Tickets start at $40. Kids tickets are just $8 for the entire weekend. VIP tickets also available, including a 3-day weekend pass, plus some really cool VIP perks. Buy your tickets and get more information at TwinCitiesCon.com. Greg Bakun here. Like you, I love good, fresh, delicious food. So I want to tell you about this treasure in Roseville called Maverick's Real Roast Beef. Maverick's has the best roast beef sandwiches I've ever had. Made fresh every order. Add fries or onion rings dropped in the fryer when ordered, and you have a winning combination. Maverick's Real Roast Beef has a lot more than roast beef, so check out their website, mavericksbeef.com, or check out their restaurant on Lexington in Roseville.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950. Recently, I had a large order of custom-designed t-shirts that needed to be turned around in a hurry. I knew exactly who to call, Grady Gear Company. Grady Gear Company is a local company that handles large and small custom clothing and apparel orders. I had a lot of questions from color, shirt quality, and what sizes we needed. Grady Gear Company was great to work with. They got us what we needed on time, and now everybody's looking great around the station in their new gear. Start your order at GradyGearCo.com.
Reach your highest level of consciousness and well-being with MetamorphosisConnections.com. MetamorphosisConnections.com is an online directory of the best holistic and metaphysical practitioners to help you make your most informed choices. You can search MetamorphosisConnections.com for classes, events, wellness and life coaches, plus metaphysical products and shops. You can also search for a wide array of healers from all modalities, including EFT, sound healing, energy healing, light therapy, ancestral healing, shamanic healing, reflexology, past life regressions, hypnotherapy, yoga, and more. And if you're not sure where to start, the search feature on MetamorphosisConnections.com is tailored to help both those who know what they are looking for and those who are just starting. Come explore the possibilities for your higher self by visiting MetamorphosisConnections.com. Their experienced practitioners can guide both beginners and those that are already on their spiritual journey. That's MetamorphosisConnection.com, your link to direct you on your spiritual transformation.
And join me tomorrow on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. It's going to be a Just Greg episode. Recently, and I mean like a couple days ago, I was out in a forest and with Char Savoy, which you may remember from such radio programs as this one, where she and I went out to try to do some Squatch sightings, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. You know what we're talking about. We had some incredible situations there. Not only that, we think we saw something there that doesn't quite fit into a forest that is really pretty exciting, and I want to share that out tomorrow. But today, we're talking about something even for me, really almost in some ways more exciting because I love silent film so much. We're talking about Curse of the Vampire Orchestra, led by Philip Shorey, and their presentation on October 25th at the Women's Club, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror from 1922. And Philip, you know, I'm listening to how important the film Nosferatu, the 1922 Nosferatu, is to you, your development, your future. And do you ever stop and think about how close we were all to never seeing that film with Bram Stoker's widow suing because it is Dracula. I mean, but if I'm not mistaken, the deal was after she won that all film prints for the film were supposed to have been destroyed, and only, I mean, one was found. I don't remember if there was any more than one that was found, but it had such a profound effect on you. It scares me. It actually literally scares me how close something that was so passionate, meant so much for you, could have maybe never have happened.
Yeah, you're right. There was the courts that deemed it in Germany plagiarism, and they ordered all copies to be destroyed. And I don't know how or who, but somebody sent a copy to California, and it sat there, I think, in a safe or something for decades. And I think it got reintroduced in the 60s. I don't know how many showings actually there were. Maybe you would know. I looked up this a long time ago.
I know.
How many showings were there of Nosferatu before it was deemed to be destroyed? That I don't know. I don't know if there was any.
It wasn't many at all, was it? I do seem to recall that it was.
I think so.
Yeah.
And so there you have it. So like it's in a vault in California, and it's still there. And so all versions of what we have today has come from that original copy, and it got reintroduced, I think, in the 60s, maybe a little earlier. But because it got reintroduced in the 60s or in the United States, that's where the cult following started for this. And then once it became famous, as you know, because Hollywood is in California, and now it's like an iconic film because of the Hollywood appeal. Now it's, you know, one of the most influential pictures of cinema history. Yeah. And so that's also why in the United States it's a public domain film, but then in Germany it's reclaimed. The Blu-ray or the digital copy is claimed by the Murnau Foundation as like that's part of their legacy. So yeah, that's all complicated stuff, but it is very, very interesting how it was almost fully destroyed.
It really is, and that maybe all we would ever hear and see would be imagery of it, like stills or anything that might have been taken around the time of production. And that's something that, you know, in itself takes on a myth of its own. I mean, I look at something like London After Midnight or something like that you see imagery and you're like, oh, I just would love to see what that film's about. Or back in the day before it was found in Argentina, say some of the stuff from Metropolis that was cut out and that we didn't see for 70 years or whatever it was. It just... That stuff is really incredible. You know, one of the things that we talked about in the last segment, which I think is very important, and I really like this, was so next year is going to be Phantom of the Opera, but originally you had it for Valentine's Day, and there is something to be reminded that a lot of these films like Phantom and perhaps even Nosferatu to a certain extent is not meant to be like in the same grouping of, say, like the Universal horror films of like, well, I mean, Frankenstein, Dracula, I also would put more towards the Phantom side of, it's more romantic. It's not necessarily meant to be horror per se, like what we consider horror today. And I think that those are things that I think are important to remind people about, because I think like something like Phantom is lumped with like the Universal horror icons, and although it isn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, the silent film was the original adaptation of the book, so it is a lot closer to the book than, say, the Broadway musical. And the Broadway musical very modernized the story. And I think, to be honest, I think the Broadway musical made it more romanticized. The way that Angelo Weber wrote the music, and
that's
the
true.
love affair that was happening allegedly between him and Christine influenced his take on the story. So the original horror film, silent horror film, Phantom of the Opera, the focus is more on the Phantom and like his face and everything. So I don't know. I think it can very well be horror for what it's going for, and that's what the book is. I think a lot more of a gothic horror novel than a romance novel. But for me personally, like I like seeing these love stories. You know, like the horror and love stories, like it sometimes goes so well together, don't they? Like
they do.
Nosferatu's got a wonderful love story in it. It's almost surprising because it's so. It's like you never talk about the romance, the love story that's going on. I'm writing music right now for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the 1923 silent film. Yeah, and that'll be a release in the next couple of years. And that one's a very complicated love story. It's very tragic, and I'm just blown away by it, by how it's sort of like it's a Romeo and Juliet story. It's with the classes, you know. It's a Frankenstein story with the public's perception of the Hunchback. It's an Igor story, you know, like Igor. And so you have the Hunchback. He's like the Igor of Frollo. It's got so many of these great stories all lumped into one. So no, it's just fascinating. I love these stories. Great.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. And I'm trying not to disparage other films, like modern films or anything, because I don't like that sort of thing where it's like it's so much better than it used to be. I mean, everyone has their own thing, but I do have a personal preference towards older films personally, and like I said before, I think what I really love about what you're doing is that you are introducing this to different generations, and even people who may be of like our generation, which I think we're probably of a generation that's one of the last holdouts for this type of film. That's a generalization, of course, but you must get people who are like, first of all, they're moved by what you do, but do you get people who are also like, this has helped me want to check out more of this genre or these films?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've gone to a lot of these shows. I think our crowd is on the younger side of things, typically. Some like I went and saw some other silent film show at the Cedar, and it was definitely a lot older. And our Chaplin film definitely brings in an older crowd when we do that. But Nosferatu, the Family Opera, is definitely a little bit younger of an audience, and I like that because it really encourages me that people are seeing these actually for the first time in this context, and that should be inspiring.
Yeah,
to see a silent film like this for the first time with a live orchestra, and hopefully it'll help the legacy of these movies, and hopefully people walk away with something even more inspiring than just movies and cinema, something personal.
I've only think I've experienced something like this once, and I think that was over at the Heights with and they have an organ. Yeah. They have the organ there, and I think it was only something for the beginning of King Kong, which King Kong is not a silent film. So there, I don't know, I don't remember what it was, and that alone blew me away. So this is a completely new experience for me that I've always wanted to experience, and thank you for doing this. Quite honestly, this is really exciting.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me and seeing it. There's not a lot of places for me to actually share. It's like we're not a rock and roll band, and we're not a movie, and we're kind of a production, more or less, but we're not Broadway. We're not theater, I mean, actually, I went and saw Hans Zimmer at the Target Center.
Oh, wow.
And that was inspiring, and it very amazing, absolutely amazing. I don't need to talk about it because you can just look it up and see how amazing it was. but it did make me feel a little bit like the Ramones, I mean, way bigger budget, way bigger stage, way bigger everything, way more amazing everything. However, man, it's nice to see a night that recognizes film music, and like the orchestra with film. I mean, it is the modern opera. I think so.
It truly is. Well, I was going to say, and we have about 2.5 minutes left here. I was going to say that when we were talking last segment, I do wonder how many people, when they think about films, that they're subconsciously thinking about musical movements in the film opposed to the visuals themselves. I'm not saying that, when you're thinking about Star Wars, you're not thinking about those great visuals, but you're also thinking about the the Empire March. You're thinking about the theme and stuff, and I think that there has to be something subconsciously going on there that you're like, oh yeah, that music, because that's how you recognize it immediately when you hear it other places.
You're gonna get a load of that at this show. You're gonna get a vampire hunting theme. You're gonna get an Ellen's Love theme. You're gonna get an arrogant Hutter adventure theme. You're gonna get like shock themes. You're gonna get gypsy music, Roma, Transylvanian music. You're going to get a lot of different themes just to kind of jump off that, like, child of the 80s. Let's revisit this era of big themes and developing themes, and do it, for a silent movie, So, yeah.
And it's amazing how themes, especially if you like it and you don't hear it for a while in the film and it comes back and that emotional punch that it gives you, it's better than any visual. I think I love it. It is inspiring. That's exciting. I'm really excited to see it. I'm really excited that you're doing this. And I have to say, before we head out here, there's hopefully a chance that someday we might do an event at the Women's Club ourselves, a paranormal event. Do you want to be in on that? Do you want to check it out? Want to join us?
Hey, man, keep me posted.
We'll do that.
Posted for sure.
I mean, that's gonna be a lot of fun. And if it happens, I mean, I'm speaking out of turn here. We haven't really dug into it at all. They have this Nosferatu thing that to get through first, if not many other things. And but it's great. And folks, I just want to remind you all that we're giving away tickets this Friday during Casual Friday of GhostBox Radio for you to be able to experience this. This is going to be amazing. I'm really excited for it. Philip, thank you so very much. I really appreciate this. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
when
I'm going to be out there on October 25th. Once again, we'll be giving away tickets this Friday for Nosferatu, a symphony of horror. It's called Curse of the Vampire Orchestra, led, composed, and conducted by Philip Shorey. Philip, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, man, come find me afterwards. I'd like to meet you.
I would love to. Everyone, we'll be back tomorrow with my Bigfoot story. Have a good night.